Let's create this fish in a cup design in Photoshop. I'll leave a link to all the files I'm using in the description so you can download and follow along. I'll start by creating a new file. The first thing we'll do is create the gradient background. Go to the gradient tool, choose a white to black gradient, and the second icon, which is the radial gradient. Then I'll click and drag and adjust. Now it's time to place the table. To do this, go to File, Place Embedded, choose the image, and we're going to place the white table. Use Ctrl-T to resize and adjust the placement. I want to make this table a little bit darker. To do that, I'm going to choose the Curves Adjustment tool, create a clipping mask, that way it'll only affect the table, and bring down the midtones and highlights a little bit. Then click on the mask and Ctrl-I to invert the mask. With my gradient tool selected, and this time using a linear gradient, I'll just click and drag to create a gradient from the curves adjustment. Now it's time to place the cup. Go to File, Place Embedded, and to get it onto its own layer, I'll use my selection tool, click the drop-down arrow, and choose Cloud. That'll give you a better selection. Then click the Select Subject button. Ctrl-J to put it on its own layer. At this point, you can get rid of the original background layer. I'm going to create a new layer now and name it Shadow. I'll name this one Cup. Let's drag the shadow layer underneath the cup layer, and now we'll create a shadow. With a hard black brush selected, I'm going to use this dial to flatten out the brush. I'll just click once, and now I'll adjust the size and turn the hardness down. So now I have a soft brush, and I'm just going to continue to click until it looks right. Again, you can use Ctrl-T to resize and adjust the placement. Back on my cup layer, I noticed this little area that doesn't look right, so I'm going to use a mask, and with my black brush selected, I'll straighten it out again, and I'm using the left bracket key to make my brush smaller. You can just click, hold down the Shift key, and click again, and it'll create a straight line. So now I'm just going to use Ctrl-T to readjust my shadow a little bit. Right-click on the mask to apply that mask to the layer. Now let's place the water. So again, File, Place Embedded, and once again, Ctrl-T to move it roughly where I think I might like it in the image. Be sure to leave a little space on the top and bottom so we can create those beveled edges that you saw in the final result. Now with a hard brush set to black, I'm just going to brush this off of the cup. I'll turn the opacity down a little bit just so I can tell where I am. And watch what I do on this bottom part. We're going to create the sort of beveled look that you see. To do that, all I'm going to do is just kind of go up and down with my brush to make a nice natural random pattern. It's also a good idea to resize your brush and create some more random little patterns of different sizes. Watch how I do it on the top. I'm starting with a large, relatively large brush to brush the water off, creating those random beveled sections, and then making my brush smaller to almost create somewhat of a drip effect. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like that for now. Let's go ahead and place the fish. Again, File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to resize and readjust him where I want him. I do want to get rid of those fish, which I should have done first, but I didn't think of it, so I'm going to do that in just a minute. I'll show you how easy it is, even sort of after the fact. But first, I'm going to show you a series of tricks to make this look more natural, like he's actually inside the water. First, double-click on the water layer. You're going to bring the black sliders in, hold down the Alt key to make it softer and smoother, and then do the same with the white sliders. So the black slider is bringing the shadows back from the underneath layer, and the white sliders are bringing back the highlights. The next thing we're going to do to make it look even better is select the goldfish layer, create a mask, and with a soft brush set at 50% opacity, a black brush, we're just going to brush the goldfish off a bit underneath those reflections. And that makes him again look like he's behind the reflections. Now I'm going to create a new layer and name this one water elements because we're going to make the water look more realistic. So let's start by creating some bubbles. I'm going to grab the color picker, choose one of the blues from the water, and then with my brush tool, I'm going to click on this icon to choose which brush I want. And there's this one that looks just like bubbles. Now I'll change the blending mode. You can choose either color dodge or linear dodge. Either one would be fine. So I might go back and forth and figure out which one looks better here. And then I'm just going to click and create bubbles. If you want the bubbles to look like they're under the fish, drag your bubbles layer under the fish layer. And then just keep randomly resizing and clicking around until it looks how you want it to look. Now, next I'm going to grab this brush that sort of looks like a sponge and straighten out the dial up here because I want it to be nice and flat. And then I'm just going to click and see how that made sort of a sun reflection on the bottom, and it looks like sand. And I'm going to use that same brush just to come through and create maybe like a pile of sand here on the bottom. And I apologize, I did film this out of sequence, which is why the bubbles seem to have disappeared all of a sudden. Next, I'm going to show you how to make those beveled edges on the top and bottom of the glass look even more realistic. And we're going to make them pop a little bit more. And you're actually going to do that from the water layer. So make sure the water layer is active and then double click on the layer itself. And you're just simply going to create a drop shadow from this water layer. I have mine set to black. If you want to change the color, you can just click up here and maybe I'll choose more of a sandy color. So I'm going to select one of the yellows from the cup maybe. Up to you what you want to use here. Adjust the sliders if you want to make it look however you like. Now we're actually going to do the top one a little bit differently. First, create a stamp visible layer by holding down Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E on the keyboard. Use the quick selection tool to select that top beveled area. I'm holding down the Alt key to deselect any part that I didn't want. Ctrl-J on your keyboard to put it on its own layer. Now you can get rid of the stamp visible layer you just created. Double-click on the layer itself and then check the box labeled Bevel and Emboss. And you can see the settings I used here. Now to get rid of those extra little fish that I don't want, I'm going to use the Remove tool. That's the one that looks like a Band-Aid with some stars around it. It works so well. All you have to do is just roughly select around what you want to remove, let go, or click the check mark, and it's gone. We're almost done. Just a couple more things to really make this look right. First of all, the left-hand side of the cup doesn't look good. It looks flat, and I'll show you how to make it look a lot more natural in just a minute. First, I also want to change the color of the background gradient to blue. I'm going to quickly resize the cup just to make it more prominent in the image, and then let's go to that gradient layer. Double-click on the gradient, double-click here, double-click on the black, and select a nice blue that you like. Click OK. Click OK again, and then you can scale it here if you like. I'll also do a quick levels adjustment on my goldfish layer just to help him pop as well. Now over here on the left-hand side of the cup, I masked off a little bit more of the water so more of the cup shows, and that helped a lot. And now I'm just going to create some shading by using a black brush at really low opacity levels and just kind of create sort of a shadowy look around the edges of the glass and the edges of the water. I'm going to do that on all sides of the cup and then change the blending mode to soft light. Continue with just a bit more shading. Here's a before and after.